flow, or do you have to press it?
So if you want to add more water, you can press it, but I feel like it just keeps the brush just like the right,
Okay.
like has a right moisture level for your brush. But definitely dip in and use some water if you're finding that it's not flowing very well. Okay, so we've got our drills page. Didn't even check to see what time it is. Does anyone know?
I have quarter after.
Quarter after 7?
6.
6, okay. Whew. All right, we still got some time. All right, so with your drills, you can, if you've got your color mixed up and you want to go ahead and not wait for me, go for it. Just want to get this up here so people that aren't sitting at my table can also see. So you're going to dip your brush in the water. That paper towel is just there if you ever need to, if you feel like you have too much and you want to blot it, just blot it on the paper towel. You can also practice on your paper. That's here not just to protect the table, it's to, like, if you just want to doodle a little bit on the paper, you can. So we're going to swirl around. I was using this one earlier today, so it's actually a little bit tacky. So I'm going to, you guys can see my messy palette here. The nice thing is you can clean this off every time, or if you have a color that you want to use again, you can just leave it there and then add more water to it, you know, next week or whenever you're painting again and it reactivates it. So get your watercolors. You want that consistency to be soupy, not goopy. That's what I tell my grade schoolers. Okay. So your downstroke, you're gonna notice you have a lot more of a dramatic, thick line. It gets thick a lot easier than, you don't have to press down as hard is what I'm saying, than with the brush pen. So if you don't like the downstroke to be as thick, you just don't press down quite as hard. The upstroke is maybe a little harder to keep thin, but like I said, it's watercolor, it's paint, so if it's a little bit not a smooth edge, I think the paint is a little bit forgiving. Your underturn, same as last time. Don't forget to kind of stop at the bottom. And if you have a transition that didn't come out so smooth, you can always just take your paintbrush and fill it in there. And then your overturn. Add just a little more pigment to my water because it's pretty see-through.
And this washes out of clothes and fabric, right?
This particular brand, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Like if you get like school grade, like Crayola watercolors, most of them do.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, while you guys work through your drills, I'm gonna walk around and see how everyone's doing with the water brushes. You guys get your first color mixed up okay? If you find like it's a little like sticky and it's not flowing, just add a tiny bit more water and mix it up and compare a plastic lid. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, yeah. And you don't need to like squeeze it while you were writing.
Yeah.
But it's just yes. teal table here. Okay. So you can continue to do the drills, or we can just move on. Let me raise your hand or shout out if you need an extra paper towel. If your page did get really wet, you can always put one like in your page as you turn it, because I don't want your whole book to get soaked. I'll just put a couple extras at each table. Would you like one?
Sure. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. One. Michelle, do you need one? Oh, you've got some. Okay. All right. Oopsies. Okay, so it might take, some of you were saying it's taking a little time to figure out how much water or how wet to get your paintbrush. But you'll get that as you go along, get that feel. All right, let's start with our lowercase a. At any point, if you feel like you got this and you just want to keep going, don't be shy. You can move ahead faster than me if you want. I don't tend to hold the watercolor brush at as much of an angle as the marker. I tend to hold it a little more upright, and I tend to have a little more like wrist action going on. It's just something that you kind of figure out as you go along. Like with certain letters, you just realize, oh, I need to kind of stop at this point and move my wrist. Something that you learn over time. So when I come up with this upstroke and go down, the brush just does a little bit of a twist there. When you're going around, the brush does tend to twist. I think that's might be when I do my wrist a little bit. But when you're going straight down, there's not really any twisting going on. I'll do that again if you want to look on the video. So I'm kind of going up into a downstroke. If you're pushing with the brush pen, when I was going around the circles, I was recommending that you guys push it around. With the bristles, I don't think that's the best idea because you want to keep them to a fine point, and if you're pushing against the bristles, they'll kind of open up and get a little messy. All right, let's leave a little space there for you to practice later at home and go down to the B. All right. You just need a very light hand as you're doing those upstrokes with the paintbrush. And if you find you've got too much paint on your brush, just kind of dab it on that paper towel, and it'll soak up a little bit of that paint, but it won't like wash your color off all the way. Because if you dip your brush in the water, then it will just make your brush more watery. Okay. And then your C is I kind of start, when I'm doing an upstroke with the paintbrush, I start with my paintbrush straight up and down. And then as I go around, oops, I'm not doing a very good job with this one. As I go around, the paintbrush is still straight up and down, but I'm just moving my wrist a little bit. Let me try this again. There we go. Now I've got a thicker downstroke right there. All right. If you get bored with your color, the fun thing about the watercolors is you can always just rinse your brush and get a new color. All right, I'll do this page and then walk around. If anyone needs a little like up close demo, I can do that too. Your D, we got that oval. I'll try and narrate this one for anyone that's watching along. So you're starting with a little bit of an upstroke, and then I'm starting to put more pressure as I come down this oval, lightening up as I go up all the way to the top of the line, and then curving around and putting more pressure as I come back down. Okay, let's do a few E's, lowercase e's. Starting off with some light pressure with an upstroke. These backward curves are kind of tricky to learn how to transition with a paintbrush, but once you get it, it will just really kind of do the work for you, as opposed to the brush pen. You don't have to push down quite as hard. Okay. And here's that loopy F. Feel free to modify that again if you need to. You don't want to bother with all those loops. So a modified loop or a modified F would just be doing that downstroke and then kind of coming back up and then out. Or however you write your cursive Fs. All right, I'm gonna walk around and see. Do you like this one a little bit better? I do, yeah. Well, that's good. I'm glad you found some. And there are a ton of other types of brushes out there too.
Yours are looking good.
Yeah, you guys are doing great. Get that out of your way, sorry. Okay. Let's do the next page. Oops. How often here do they? All right. Okay, for your lowercase g, you are doing that oval again. It's hard to kind of get used to it again with a different tool, but just put more pressure down and your brush will spread out on its own. Go back up and then do your downstroke. If you find that your paintbrush isn't flowing or gliding on the page, you might just need like a tiny bit more water. You really have to find the balance. If you have too much water, then your color isn't nice and bright, and you don't want that either. But as you play around with just adding a little more color or a little more of the pigment from your set, then you'll get the hang of it after a while. Oops, I started on my H and I didn't even say. All right, for your H, if you are, I know not everyone's following along on the camera, but if you are, you're gonna do that loop again, going with a thin upstroke, and then coming around the top, putting more pressure down, going back up, putting more pressure as you go down. And the lowercase I is pretty simple. You're starting with that downstroke, and then you're lightening up at the bottom as you do that little curve. You need to blot your page before you turn it, you can, but it does dry pretty quickly. Remember, this is your practice book, so it's okay if there's some little paint splotches on it.
We don't have to turn it in, do we?
No, you don't. I will not be grading. Okay, so we'll move on to J, K, and L. If your watercolor is drying up a little bit, make sure to add a little more pigment and a little more water. All right, your lowercase j is starting with that downstroke. And then when you get to the bottom, sometimes it's tricky to kind of go backwards and come back up, but that is the proper way to do it, with a light touch. If you can't do it that way, you can always try to kind of do a backwards downstroke, but you just want to remember to still have a light touch. So this is the improper. If you're watching the video, I'm going backwards here on this one. It's just a little easier for me to control. Okay, your K. Going up with a light touch, and then feel free to pause. Every time you change from upstroke to downstroke, it's okay to pause and just kind of readjust your hand, or just be thoughtful about the pressure you're going to put as you move up or down. You guys are probably the quietest class I've ever had.
We're concentrating.
Yes, that's good. Kids and adults probably. I've had some chatty adult classes too. Which is fine, as long as you're working. And then the L is pretty simple. You're just doing that lighter touch as you go up on your upstroke. And then when you get to the top, pause if you need to, and transition to that heavier pressure for your downstroke. Paulette, do you have the time again?
Do what?
I ask you the time again.
Sure. It's about 20 to 7.
20 till 7. Okay, good. So after we get through the alphabet here, there's some quotes at the end, so we can practice like writing a whole word.
Are we going to learn how to do this
And
variegated?
Yes, I'll demo that too if
Cool.
you want to attempt to mix more than one color, or blend more than one color. Okay. So if you're mixing up paint in your palette, you'll notice this whole time it's drying. Your colors are always drying, so you might have to, as you go along, just add a little more water or a little more pigment, or mix up another one. The M, you're going to start with your upstroke. Very light touch when you get to the top. That brush spread out. I have a little too much water on my brush, so I'm just gonna tap it on my paper towel there. Okay. I find the easiest transitions with the paintbrush are the kind of ups and downs, when you're just kind of going up a hill, down a hill. That's a lot easier than going around. N is very similar to the M. And when you get home or the next time you pull this out, if you're still frustrated with certain letters and you think, you know, that doesn't feel natural to me, you can, you know, look up different fonts, different typefaces, to see different ways that people letter. Like, I know there's some funky ones like the, you know, Q or Z, or just different, there's different ways to interpret these letters. So we're learning the rules about today, but you can definitely break the rules, because it really is an art form. And And then this O, I start this O with a kind of a wide brush stroke going down. And then I always kind of pause at the bottom, get that thin brush stroke going up, and then I pause and adjust my brush again, and I'm coming down. Oh, it's a doggy
that a
that's not,
dog?
I think so. Someone's not happy. I think. All right. All right, so we've got 1, 2, 3. I think we've got just 4 pages left of this, of the practice, and then we'll move on to trying some quotes. Or just even attempting to write a word, string some of these together. Okay. All right, our lowercase p, starting with an upstroke, pause at the top, and transition to your downstroke. Just put a little more pressure on that brush. You guys have probably noticed it doesn't take much to get a thicker line with the paintbrush when you change your pressure. All right, do that one more time with your lowercase p. Do an upstroke, pause at the top, put more pressure as you go downwards. Upstroke is coming out, turning into a downstroke. You can just close it right there if you want to, if you don't like the extra loop, but I like to add this little loop if I'm writing, if it's in the middle of a cursive word, because then that's a nice way to continue it onto the next letter. All right, Q. Starting with a little upstroke there. Put some more pressure. Your brush should widen out for you. Go back up. And we're doing a downstroke now. Stopping at the bottom if you need to adjust, and then closing it up at the top. Do that one more time. If you're struggling with the backwards, the ovals when you go from thin to thick, just practice that, on a scrap piece of paper or on your drill sheet. And you'll eventually get a feel for it and figure out how you need to hold your hand, how much pressure you need to put. It will come, I promise. Okay, lowercase r, starting with an upstroke. And then we're doing this little downstroke for our loop. And then remember your horizontal lines, you just treat those like an upstroke with a thin, less pressure, thin line. If you want to move on to the next page, you can. I'm just going to make a round real quick, and then I'll start on those S's. means that next time just add a little more water when you're mixing it up. Okay, S's, lowercase s. I'm gonna switch to another blue here. If you want to attempt any of the uppercase letters, you're more than welcome to. I'm just kind of breezing over them right now. Lowercase s, we're starting with that upstroke. Oops. I'm going to blot my brush because I have a little too much ink on there. Then we're going to a downstroke. And we're kind of curving backwards here as we lighten up our touch to an upstroke. All right. Let's do that one more time. Upstroke. Thicker downstroke. It's always okay to pause halfway through your letter. I certainly do it. And curve back around. Sorry about all my stuff here. Okay. And let's move on to the T. You can start with this connecting upstroke if you want, or you can not do it if you don't want to do that part. And we're going to move to the downstroke, curve it up, and your horizontal line, we treat that as an upstroke. So if it was standing alone, you would just do that. Or you could have a straight bar if you don't like the curvy one. Oops. And your U, we're doing that overturn to start, to a downstroke, curve upwards, and downstroke again. All right, do that one more time and we'll move to the next page. All right, let's try that V. We're going to do a little upstroke to lead into the V, more pressure for your downstroke, and go back up. You can simply stop there if you are not connecting your letters in a script format. If you are, though, doing a little loop here is a nice way to get to your next letter. Okay. So we're gonna go up, down stroke, go back up, and then a little loop to connect. All right, let's do the W. Starting with an upstroke, downstroke to connect, go back up, down, and up. Like I said before, it's totally okay to go back and touch up a letter if you thought, oh, that upstroke was too squiggly. You can go and make it a little thicker and smooth it out. Yes, you like this one better? Yeah. Good, I'm glad you found something that feels more natural for your hand.
Much more unforgiving.
Right,
Much more
yeah.
forgiving,
I think
yes.
it's paint, it's watercolor, so it's okay. All right, and then your X is just one arm, one side of it is going to be your downstroke, so it's going to be a little thicker. And then you're gonna try and keep that other one as thin as possible, just to show some contrast. All right. Just have Y and Z, and then we can experiment a little bit with blending some colors. All right, so your lowercase y, I have a little overturn here if you were connecting to a letter, going into a downstroke, going up again, and another downstroke. I still always have to pause when I get to the bottom of a Y or a G to make that a smooth transition. Some letters might not have to pause, but I just always need to do that. And sometimes I go backwards. So you can skip that underturn or overturn if you want and just go straight into a downstroke if that's easier for you. And then the proper way to finish this would be to curve around and go up with an actual upstroke. Okay. Do this Z. Okay. So your Z, you're starting with an upstroke. Downstroke. Lighter touch as you do this little hump, and then downstroke again. And then kind of pause and adjust for a lighter upstroke as you come up. Touch up as needed. Okay. So, as you finish up that last section, raise that up a little bit. The next section, if you got to your Z, the next section says brush lettered quote practice, and I have a few different quotes here that you can practice, or just words actually, just common phrases that you might want to write. Hello, sweet love. The next page says, if you want to practice a phrase, be the change. There's a page that says you are loved. You can practice that. And then, oops, I'm not even showing in the camera. And then there's a few blank practice pages we won't fill this all up tonight, but as you want to practice writing your name or anything else that's there for you. If you run out, like if you want to save one, you could just make photocopies of it. There are also, I'm sure, tons of just free download, like go online and just Google,
Now, is
practice.
Is doing this on watercolor paper going to be really a lot different?
It'll be a little bit different, yeah. And I actually brought, I'm going to show you guys here in just a second. I brought a little card for us, a little watercolor paper, so you can try it out. So if you want to practice on here first, the word hello, you can. And then I'm going to pass out while you guys are practicing this. I have a little card, and I penciled the word hello on it, so it's like the same thing that you just practiced, and it's on watercolor paper. So it'll be a different feel, but you can get used to it.
Okay.
So I will pass that out in just a second, but some of you, Paulette was asking about doing that effect where you change colors, that you see that on the cover of the booklet. It kind of goes from like a light pink to a darker pink into purple. So before you do that, you want to decide what colors do you want. And you want to take your palette and mix them up in your palette. You can mix them up next to each other. I would advise choosing a color that's next to, like 2 colors that are next to each other on this palette right here. Because those will, the way that they ordered these, they're mostly like in rainbow order, and so they will blend nicely with each other. So you could do like 2 shades of green, 2 blues, like an orange and yellow, and even if you go from yellow to green, for those of you that aren't brushed up on your color theory, if you tried to blend like red and green together, that would actually give you like a brown, which is okay if you want brown, but if you want it to have that ombre kind of blended look, you want to pick colors that are next to each other. So go ahead and, if you want to try that, mix up 2 colors and get them ready. Since I've been using blues, I will stick with, I'll do 2 shades of blue, or you could go like green to blue, teal to blue, pink to purple would work too. That's okay. So let's see. So you kind of want to mix them in 2 separate areas, and then if they end up mixing towards the end, that's okay. So I've got this green and teal color. We'll see how those go. When you are connecting your letters, you just want to use a thin upstroke for the most part. Just like when you're writing cursive, you're going to connect your letters in the same way, but just try and keep a light touch when you connect your letters. So you can practice over the black words if you want, hello, or you can go straight to the gray. I'm going to start with, here, I'll try and put this here if you're watching the video. So I'll start with 1 color, and I'm going to do my thick downstrokes first for my capital H. And if I'm just going to do a blend from like 1 color to a second color, you can do about half of your word first, and then you can transition, or you can transition right away if you want. Now I'm doing this over gray, so the color isn't going to be quite as vibrant, but I want to leave just like a little bit more color. I want to leave like a little bit of a pool of color there, and then I can go straight to my next one, and I can just kind of tap into it and then keep going, and it should just kind of blend on its own because the water will like pull the pigments and kind of just do its magic and mix for you. So you don't have to kind of like go back and forth and mix it. As long as the color you just ended on is still wet, and then you touch it with your new color, it should do some blending for you. And then if you do a couple letters and you decide, oh, I want to go back to your other color, just get your other color mixed up and do the same thing. So as I go by this one, it should kind of blend in. So while you guys are practicing doing that, you can do any of these words here or move on to the next page at your own pace. I'm going to pass out these little watercolor cards. Let's see. I'll just put them on the table because I do have these little baskets. So the card, it's not folded yet because it's easier to write on a flat surface, but there's like a scored line there, so you can fold it when you're done. And I've gone ahead and I just wrote out the word hello because I thought, well, that'd be a fun little card to have or give to somebody, and we just practice it. But if you want to write something different, you can just use your pencil in your kit and write something on the other side and erase that. Excuse me. So I'll go ahead and pass these out, and then when you feel ready to try on the watercolor paper, you can. I'm actually going to grab some water.
I think these might require some practice.
Okay. So I'll pass these out and then I'll demonstrate again on this video. Let's see. I had some that I had it written on. So that's for you. There you go, yeah. So this is just sketched really lightly. It doesn't show which lines should be thicker, but you can kind of just use your practice book as a reference. And I do also have mini envelopes if when you are done. You can take them home with an envelope.
This isn't just cardstock, it's actually...
This is watercolor paper. You can do it on cardstock too, if you want.
Like, does it absorb it differently?
This is probably better. It probably it's designed for watercolors, but cardstock is thicker and it's probably like a better option for practicing. But I've lettered on cardstock before too. Okay. How did you do that? Okay, that's okay. So we've got two colors. Okay, so make sure you have that your red, okay, and then you got your hot pink there. So you want to have generous amount of paint using gradient transition. Stop there. Could be two sorts of colors are very similar. It's not showing itself. It's dark orange here.
So you picked up the color, wasn't it?
Yes,
Loaded
I
on the
picked
brush.
it. Yeah, I didn't do my mistakes. Now I'm gonna say it's big. It's already big. Now I'm gonna do that right. So it should be. Because
Where we are.
yeah, maybe if you added like a little more purple to your red, there's more of a contrast. I bet when you get this all dry, you'll see it a little bit better too. Okay. That helps. Yeah. Need help trying to gradient part out?
Do you want me to re-demo it?
Do that again? Okay, are you using that little video? Because I can do it up close on the video.
I can.
Yeah. Okay. All right, let me do it one more time on this video for those of you that want to do your card. I'll try and get a little bit closer. Oops.
Yeah, we definitely feel like we weren't seeing it on the video.
It didn't show. Okay. Okay.
The way that it doesn't.
Okay. I can come back around and show you too in person. Okay. So make sure you have colors that are next to each other on the color wheel, but also have a little bit of a contrast too. We were trying over there with like the hot pink and the red. They're very close in color, which is fine, but it's a little hard to see in the lighting here. So I will do this on the watercolor paper for everyone to see, and then I'll walk around and kind of coach you in person if you would like me to. So let's get our two colors mixed up. I'll try and do a couple that are a little more contrasting. I'll do a darker blue. And then to do this, I'll mix in a little more teal with this light green. Okay. So the watercolor paper soaks up a lot more of the paint. You'll just kind of realize as you start, it's a little bit of a different feel than just painting on copy paper. And the paint dries a lot more beautifully on it too. So I'm doing my downstrokes with this teal color. I'll do a few letters, or a couple letters, and then I will start to switch to that darker blue color there. And you don't want your brush to be too dry or sticky. You want to have plenty of water so that those colors will start to blend automatically. So let's see, I'm going to make sure I have enough paint kind of pooled on my letter. Might need to mix up a little more actually. So you can try this a couple times on your practice page if you want, and then go for it on your card. If you don't want to try the card today and you just want to do it at home, that's fine too. But I'm here to help you through it today if you want. Okay, so I'm going to my blue. And I'm just going to tap it in here. And I'm going to drag it down. And then keep going. And you can kind of see, to add my O there, but you can kind of see there's the gradation coming through. If you want to mix back to your other color, you can do that too. Okay. So if you're watching on the video, it's not really auto-focusing nicely for me, but there was that little demo, and I will walk around for those of you that want to see it again if you didn't have the video. That's great, Michelle. You did great. It's your first time. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's good.
You guys jumped right into it. Okay. So,
Almost wetter than mine.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's super thin, but then I feel like I see through if I do it on
me too.
this paper. So I wonder if that's just better for like watercolor paper to bake it.
So part of that,
I do like that. I do feel like that. Like
It
when I go
makes a
buy
big
stuff.
difference.
I don't want to
Makes stop at my
when you're
bills.
drinking water. Mind if I move this over here?
Does your pen feel like it needs that much powder?
I did use some.
I guess I expected it to just
Yeah.
disappear. That's
Oh,
all.
yeah.
I thought the colors look pretty on here, but now it's like they're so much more vibrant when you see them actually on the watercolor paper.
Mhm.
It's like, oh, that's a lot.
I'm not brave enough to blend yet.
I'm not good enough to blend. I'm just stuck.
I think mine was
I
too
think
dry
that's
to
one
blend.
of the. Intermediate.
So the pencil will erase under those lines?
So if you're using like a yellow paint on top of your pencil,
I'll go dark.
And well, yeah, I would go darker. Try and draw as lightly as possible.
Okay.
And then if you had like a dark line, you can just kind of erase it so there's just like a faint line.
Yeah, like
But
kinda just
the
like-
eraser, like if you have any stray lines, like lines you didn't cover up,
Okay.
then
I feel like I might get okay, but if you're doing a long thing and all of a sudden you screw up on, what do you, I mean, you know, it's like, do you have to start all over? I don't know. It's like anything else.
and as it dries up, that's
I'm nervous right now.
I've got a couple extra. Does anyone that has catastrophe? Does anyone need? I have like 3 extras, but does anyone want an extra?
Sure.
And then I have a couple extra. Do you want a blank one or one that says hello? Because I have a couple blank ones. Yeah.
So do you just buy this at Michael's, like the paper at
You can
Michael's?
buy, yeah,
Do you
you can
score
buy.
it yourself? Or like you buy
Yes,
it
I did.
yourself?
Yeah,
Okay.
I bought like a big thing and I cut it down. There are some. Aquash does have some little art supplies, but also like the art.